I have 3 framed faxes from Andre on my bedroom wall that say, paraphrasing, please call Niall Smith and have this dog pillow returned. Please call the Carlisle Hotel and retrieve my Vuitton trunks. There are 17 of them. Call Ingrid Sishia, interview, say yes to dinner, call Graydon and tell him where Ingrid likes to sit at dinner, etc. And it was the longest list of just stuff we had to do.
So when were you expected to get this list complete?
As soon as possible. Make waste, Mr. Coates.
Welcome to Going Rogue. I'm Jill Demling. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Brian Coates, or the boy in the closet, as AW once referred to him. Brian started as a fashion assistant at Vogue Magazine in 1996, where he not only ran the Vogue fashion closet, but also assisted the legendary ALT, Andre Leon Talley. Brian was recruited by GQ in the year 2000 and worked there as a fashion editor for the next 13 years before going freelance. Now Brian styles everything from magazine shoots, ad campaigns, and even celebrities like Vogue favorite Jimmy Fallon. Let's listen as the boy in the cupboard goes rogue, spilling all the Vogue closet tea. Hi, Brian.
Hi, Jill.
I am so excited to have you on Going Rogue today because I know I'm guaranteed to be laughing for the next hour. It's funny, I can't remember the first time we actually met, but I know it was over 25 years ago, and that we most likely met in the closet when I was taking a rare, or maybe not so rare, smoke break when I was Anna's assistant.
Rare as a Himalayan snow leopard sighting, I'm sure.
And no, Emily Blunt did not play me in The Devil Wears Prada. Giselle did, for all of you out there who think I was the bitchy one. Well, anyway.
You're going with that. Okay.
Not to digress, but I can't believe we were allowed to smoke in the closet where all the clothes for every shoot were being stored. Were we allowed to?
Technically, no. It is unbelievable, particularly today. But it wasn't really looked down on because the big editors did it. So we snuck in after them.
And wasn't there a story that the reason it got banned, something happened at Brides?
No, it was Vanity Fair. There were 2 editors who came in to the Vanity Fair closet and were smoking and were ashing in a styrofoam cup with no water in it, which is really smart. And they put their cigarettes out, melted onto a stack of paper, and set the closet on fire. We were evacuated, and from then on, it was very banned. Not at all.
I don't even remember that. I wonder if I was in the office though.
Yeah.
So we were allowed to smoke all the way through our
350.
Madison.
I think you could.
Even in their offices. I thought Paul Cavaco.
Yeah, in the early days. You're right. At 350.
Because Tawny
Paul was
in
in
his
there.
office. Yeah.
Yes, because I love Paul.
Yeah, I think
so much. He actually was one of the first people to kind of put me in my place. Like, you got to earn the right to be here. And
what happened?
He was in the fashion closet styling and prepping for a shoot, and the Bazaar editors, Harper's Bazaar editors, worked a very specific way. They would dress a mannequin typically to see the dress or the look on a mannequin form instead of other editors, and everyone had a different way of working. But I always remember Tawny, Elisa, and Paul that worked at Harper's Bazaar needed a mannequin, and there were like 4 other big editor deals in the closet, and everyone's oohing and eyeing. I was like, oh my God, that's genius, that's genius, that's genius. And my desk is right outside of the entrance to this closet, and it's this shitty, cheap little Formica counter thing. And I just got up and walked in. What is going on? There's some genius happening, and I want to see it. It's like my first 2 weeks there or something. And I walk in, and everyone gets silent. And he looks up at me, and he's like, excuse me, who are you? he knew who I was, but he maybe didn't know my name. But what I loved about it, didn't love it at the time, was he said, "I'm sorry, who asked you to come in here?" And I froze and just started slowly backing out. "I'm so sorry," like I had interrupted a secret meeting or something.
Yeah.
Or a ceremony. He said, "Go sit down. When we need you, we'll call you." And what he meant was, you have to earn the right to come in and see what we're doing. And later I got it and I appreciated it.
Well,
and I
it's
think
a little hard because that was kind of your office, you know. But for everyone listening who doesn't know what the Vogue closet was, and how it operated, can you just explain a little bit about it, since your early years were so defined by
yes,
the fashion closet?
So it was a big room, depending on the building we were in. Didn't look like the movie version whatsoever.
Not that first one.
Looked like a department store, but it's a big room. It basically stored all the racks of clothes for each editor's sittings, which are synonymous, at least with old school of us, for fashion shoots. And everything was labeled and by editor with their story idea on it. And everything got stored in there overnight. In the mornings, I had to get there really early, just like Jill Demling did, and pull all the racks out in front of the editor's offices, line them up immaculately, make sure their shoes were out, all the accessories, etc. And other than that, my desk was in there with like a beige Macintosh computer I didn't know how to use.
So you got all the tea
shoes.
Then.
Yeah,
you were there when anyone came in. So you must have heard everything. What are some of the craziest things that you heard, with or without naming names?
When I first started and didn't know anyone, I put a giant jar of candy on my desk. This is actually when you could still smoke at 350 Madison. And I knew that was a good way to get to know people, because one of my other jobs was to walk around and make sure all the girls had at least eaten part of their muffin for breakfast. So I put a jar of candy, so at least they had some lunch and nutrition. And then it was like chum in the water. Like they'd come and grab a piece of candy, light a cigarette, and say, "Oh, did you hear about Regina? Did you hear what she did last night?" I'm like, "No." And luckily I was smart enough to just be quiet and listen. Oh, and then I would hear the story. And puts her cigarette out, leaves. Then Regina comes in. She's like, "Oh, did you hear about Kate? Did you hear what she did last night?" I'm like, "No." And I didn't want to get into it, but
these are real people.
That's how I got to know everyone. And I knew, just keep your mouth shut, circle of trust. I'm not going to run and tell Kate what Regina said and vice versa. And that's initially how I met.
Yeah, because in the
and got to know everyone.
Yeah.
Because I was the guy they could come in and not feel threatened by.
And one of the only guys in the fashion
department. 4
department.
of us.
Yeah.
I really don't think I would have lasted more than a month if I'd been female at that magazine. It's so much harder for the girls than it was for the guys.
So we're going to get into more of your Vogue years, but let's start at the beginning. You've told me that you knew what you wanted to do at just 6 years old, growing up in a very small town in North Carolina. Can you please tell us the story and how you discovered your love of fashion at such a young age?
Elsa Klensch. She had a show on CNN, Style with Elsa Klensch. She was the very first broadcaster talking about fashion. And she had a show every Saturday morning. And I would plop down on the carpet in front of the TV and ask my mother if I could have McDonald's for breakfast. This was a ritual, but I had to ask nicely because I'm Southern. "Mom, could I have an egg McMuffin and 2 hash browns?" Couldn't have a Coke because we have Coke at home. But anyway, I would sit there and watch that for style, beauty, and decorating. And she covered everyone, every designer.
But had your mom watched it before?
No,
that's
never.
When you saw it? You just found it on your own?
I found it. And it was such a weird thing for a 6-year-old kid in the South to style Elsa Klensch is on, run. And I'm not a morning person, even at 6, to say the least. So for me to be up whatever time in the morning it came on was...
What did your mother think about that?
She loved it. She thought it was great. She probably didn't understand it at first, but I never was made to feel bad about it or anything. Yeah. It was just like, okay, this is what he does on Saturday morning. It was kind of like my cartoons. I didn't wake up and watch cartoons. I woke up and watched fashion on television.
And then did you want to start wearing the designers? I could see you asking for, the Yves Saint Laurent.
I didn't really have a concept of it at that age. I think it was, for me, aspirational, which ironically is what we went on to do, work for, magazines and brands that promote a certain lifestyle. I think for me, just growing up in a really small town in the South, it was just such an escape. I want to go there. Look, it's Calvin Klein's showroom, and she's talking to Calvin, and he likes white pencils. I didn't know they made white pencils. And it just was so outer limits.
Did it lead you to want to learn more about the industry or to read magazines?
100%. I got in trouble because I would spend all my allowance on Vogue and every other magazine because I was obsessed. They're still in my mom's attic somewhere. She keeps telling me I need to clean it out.
And was your mom into fashion at all?
She was always very chic. When I look at pictures now, she's one of the hardest working nurse anesthetists ever. So her wardrobe wasn't. But growing up, I always thought she was a fashion plate and really chic. But the town was not, except for a few rich ladies. No one really dressed up, and it wasn't a wealthy environment. It was like Dallas, Texas. It was essentially Mayberry, but we had maybe 3 stoplights instead of 1.
Yeah, I don't know if you experienced this, but I was speaking with Jimmy Paul, and he remembers so distinctly being a child watching his mother get ready to go out. Mm-hmm. How he'd see her transform, mm-hmm. and just the confidence and just the process mm-hmm. of dressing and hair and makeup. Mm-hmm. And he was just mesmerized by the transformation of a woman.
Well, Mom used to take me to the beauty shop on Fridays when she would go to get her hair done. And that was one of mm-hmm. my favorite
Yep, that's what he'd say.
Things. She's sitting under those classic hair dryers. And sometimes I'd fall asleep and take a nap in her lap. She famously told me once when I asked her why I was an only child, that, well, honey, you were a lot and I was done. Okay. But yeah, the beauty shop was cool. They had a stack of Vogue and Cosmopolitan, which was super racy back then. And, it was just all these ladies gossiping. And I was obsessed, so.
And so did you know back then, I want to be in fashion, but did you know exactly what in fashion that you wanted to do when you grew up?
Yeah, I think because, again, that show that I watched, I knew from about 6 years old, I was going to be a fashion designer. I was going to go to Parsons in New York because I think except for 2 or 3, every designer that she had profiled who were based in New York had gone to Parsons. And even later in life, growing up and keeping an eye on that school, pretty much every designer, I think there are 3 big exceptions, who went to either FIT or RISD or Pratt.
Did you have a favorite designer growing up that you felt your style was most aligned?
Yeah, actually, Bill Blass, who I ended up interning for, ironically. Wow. I loved all the socialite ladies.
That has
and I've always had an old school, probably, that's a lot to do with it. I was an old soul when I was out of the womb.
Because you wanted the nice dress.
And I just loved, again, it wasn't Dallas, but it was adjacent, the big jewelry and the big earrings. And it was also the 80s. I was so enamored with that, style, the bigger hair, the closer to God, the big gold earrings and all that stuff. I just thought it was so glamorous and so not of my world that I was obsessed with it. Yeah, I think the old school sets were the ones I looked up to the most, and then eventually got an internship at Bill Blass, which catered to the set, ironically.
And then when you told your parents, I'm going to Parsons, I'm going to be a designer and I'm leaving this small town and I'm going to the big city, what did they say?
They were always supportive of pretty much everything I ever wanted to do. I think looking back on it now, they were completely freaked out, but never said that. It was always, if you want this, you can do it and we'll help you do this. However, you have to work your ass off and be the first one there, the last one to leave.
Oh, wow.
And
So
do
they
what
really set you
anyone
up
tells
with.
you. I was just raised that
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
You can't be
It's
lazy.
Yeah.
And looking back on it now, I know part of the reason they were freaked out was because it was a fortune. I think it was 27, 30K a year. We couldn't afford that.
But that's
my
a
parents
lot.
couldn't afford
But
that.
listen,
So,
they have
you
to
know.
have really believed in you. They didn't have to necessarily believe in your skills as a designer, but they believed that this was going to pay off some way. Because to go to a specific school for a specific career instead of a liberal arts college, which gives you a little bit of time to decide.
Right.
It's really stalling.
Well, I also told them I had applied to colleges that I really didn't.
Okay, so they thought this was one of many.
Right. Because in my town, you go to Duke if you're lucky and can afford it, or Carolina, or NC State. And if you don't get into those three, you go to ECU or somewhere else. And it's high school part 2. And
Right.
everyone in my high school goes there, and I could not wait to leave because I didn't appreciate it like I do now. Going home and I just could not wait to leave. I wanted the jolt
Was that
of the
just
city.
to leave to get out of the South and just
No, it
hit
was
the big
just to
city?
fill my dream. There was nowhere else as far as I
It was
knew
Paris or New York.
to do, to work in the industry.
But were you scared you might not
terrified.
get into Parsons?
Oh, 100%.
That was the only school.
I negotiated my way in.
How did that
I was
happen?
turned down.
Wait, what do you mean? So you only applied to Parsons, so you're freaking out when you get
No,
a
I
rejection
got
letter?
I think I was waitlisted.
Okay.
So we took a trip, and back then you could do a pre-summer course.
Oh, right. Yes. 'Cause I
And
applied
they kind
to
of
those, yeah.
I hate this word immerse, but they immerse you in, New York and Parsons
course,
and
yep.
so to see if you can handle it.
Of course.
And it's in a dorm. It's, it's just kind of see if you're going to have a panic attack or you're going to excel.
Do you have to apply to get into that?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So you got into
But
that.
the standards are not
Right.
quite as high because you're just really taking a, like a summer,
Right.
college course. It's a truncated version of what you're going to do in the BFA program. But where I grew up, art class was throwing a clay mug for your mom on Mother's Day. It wasn't, what sophisticated high schools and their art programs were.
Well, they're not anymore. They're getting
So-
chopped.
Correct.
They're one of
So
Trump's
I had
cuts.
no, I couldn't draw. I just had a huge, gigantic craving and passion and enthusiasm to do that. It was all I wanted to do. I didn't grow up being that kid in high school, I don't know. I knew and was laser focused on it my whole life. And I have a personality where if I want to do something and it's difficult, I want to do it even more. And there's a solution to every problem.
So
So it's just about finding the solution.
Yeah. So how did you convince them to take you in?
My parents brought me up. They actually came to pick me up from, I think, the end of the summer course. And I loved it. I was obsessed. There's no way I was leaving. And I went into the admissions office, and the administrator, with my mom and dad in the room, just said, "We love your son. We think he's great, but he can't sketch or draw. And it's not his fault. He just never had that sophisticated schooling." And she was afraid that I couldn't hack it compared to all the other students who had that teaching before me. And it was so funny. My dad kind of leaned in and said, listen, lady, he's not leaving this room until we figure this out. So you can either say yes now, or we can be here all day. It's up to you, but we got to figure something out. I might have admitted this is the only school I applied to, possibly, but it was more, he knew I don't take no for an answer.
Right.
And so
And
they let
how much
me,
you wanted this.
yeah, thank you. And they were so supportive, I have to say. My God, as far, as parents can be, the money thing, I can't even imagine being in their shoes.
Right.
Like, how are we going to pay for this? But I also was, I was told you have to get a job and you
Like
have
while
to,
you're in school.
Yeah. And an internship and, like the first year for sure, I completely depended on them.
Right.
After the first year, when I wanted to move into an apartment, I was like, okay, we'll help you, but you're going to have to be a part of this as well. So I got a job waiting tables at a restaurant in a hotel called the Paramount. That back then was super big deal kind of thing. But yeah, they just to finish the thought about getting into school, I negotiated going into continuing ed with all these old farts at night, kind of thing,
Just as
for
a backup
one
plan.
semester to get me in. And if I did well for 6 months, then I could be in a BFA program with the classes that I wanted to be in. I did it in 3 months because my grades were great and I was impressing the professors, and I was really happy with that. But I basically was like, this has got to happen. Let's figure this out. There's, a solution to every problem. That was the deal we made.
Okay, and then during Parsons, you were studying to become a designer. That
Yes.
was your plan.
And I graduated with a BFA in fashion design.
At this point, you graduated Parsons and you're like, here we go. I'm the next Calvin Klein, Bill Blass. Let's do this.
Yes, that's what I thought.
And
we
what
also
happened?
had great fashion critics back then. They had a critic program. So Isaac Mizrahi was one critic that I had. And then Veronique Nishanian from Hermes was my other critic. So I did a men's and a women's look, not a collection, and it goes into the thesis show, at the end of the year. But yeah, I did that. And then when I graduated, I had an internship at Bill Blass, luckily, where I met the most amazing people. Shout out to Marguerite Giuliano, who is still a good friend of mine. She was Mr. Blass's executive assistant. So I had some experience already in a high fashion design office. But the plum jobs that you really want, at Calvin Klein or Ralph Lauren or Donna Karan, there's like 8 of them back then in New York. And no one leaves. And it's like any industry, it's really, really hard.
But our industry in particular, no one leaves. Mm-hmm. You have photographers. Mr. Penn was shooting stories till he was 90. We have editors that didn't retire. They were told to please retire. Well, it's an industry of no retirement.
Yeah.
It
and
really is.
Those design jobs particularly were really hard to get. And so I interviewed at all of them. And the interviews went great. It's kind of like pitching a film idea or a movie, a TV series to Netflix or something. And the meeting goes great. Like, we love it. We'll call you. Or then crickets. So I did have great jobs, but they were at brands, that were like Club Monaco. One of my first jobs as an assistant, I actually worked with Jenna Lyons at J. Crew. She was amazing. I loved working there, but it didn't feel like the design that I wanted to be designing. Like Jenna hadn't taken it over and made it into her way.
Yeah, and J. Crew wasn't going to be Dallas.
And I worked in a department called Durables. And my favorite thing was they let me rename colorways of striped sweaters or something. But there was a binder of official J. Crew names for red, blue, turn the page.
Oh my God.
It was like Fiesta, Sunset, And I got so disenchanted with
But
it.
it's one thing to go into a career and not really know what to expect. Like I didn't know what to expect. I hadn't dreamt of working at Vogue at all. Working at Vogue never even crossed my mind. So I fell into it. But you had this dream of what your career was going to be like. You were leaving this small town and you're going to be working with Bill Blass and making these magical fashion pieces. And here you are, and it's nothing like what your dream was. So that disappointment must have.
Well, it freaked me out because I also realized even before I graduated, I would notice really good friends of mine who were obsessed with, they wake up and dream about 14 ways to make a duffel coat. And I started realizing like, I don't wake up like that. I wake up like, here are 14 duffel coats. These are the best 3.
Yeah, interesting.
And it freaked me out. One, my parents spent a fortune for me to go to the school and be a designer. But then I started to realize my senior year, like, why don't I wake up like he does? And it was all evolving. But then I realized like, I have more of an editorial mind than a designer mind.
It makes sense when you're originally trying to apply to Parsons and you didn't have the technical skills, but you had the creative mind. I mean, that's
enthusiasm.
right. You knew what you wanted, but it's like you wanted the designer to make it.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it hit me one day. Like all my friends in design are so amazingly talented. It kind of goes back to what the admissions person said. In a way, she was right.
That's interesting.
But she also was in a box herself and didn't realize like, but
you could be, right.
That it wasn't really applied there. There's not a school that teaches how to be an editor or how to work at a fashion magazine. That's not a thing.
So how was that moment of realization? What were the next steps then? You realize, okay, I'm actually on the wrong path. Thank God you realized that. A lot of people would only realize that from failures, not before they even got to fail, which is a blessing. But what did you do next? What was the pivot?
Yeah, I didn't want to leave the industry. I just didn't know why this wasn't for me. I had a best friend who worked at Details magazine. And for the kids who are listening, that used to be a magazine printed on paper. And he got me an interview at HR at Condé Nast because he, being a really good friend, was sick of hearing me complain that I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
I was doing the knockoff jobs. And he's like, Condé Nast, they go through assistants like tissue paper. So would you ever want to just interview with HR? I was aware of the company and all the magazines. Obviously, I had read them. There are tears of every magazine and every supermodel all over my dorm room.
Yeah.
But I didn't really know what the industry was like. Luckily, I had an in. And back then, particularly, you had to either be very wealthy, really pretty, or know someone who worked there to even just get an interview.
Yeah, that's how I got my interview, because I worked for Brian Lord in California at CAA, Creative Artists Agency, and his brother was marrying Crystal Moffat, who had worked at, I think, one of the Condé Nast magazines. I had helped her with her wedding to Brian's brother. So she had set up the interview. I would have never thought about it, but I do know Bucky Keaty, the legendary HR woman. I know you have a story about that interview. And for me, I had no idea. I was a math major in college. I'd never thought about working.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, working in magazines. I mean, I thought I wanted to be an artist.
Your math brain works?
Yeah. So I ended up becoming an art major with a math minor, but I did come to the city over the summers of college, but I still never thought about a magazine. Bucky asked me when I showed up, she goes, "Do you know who Anna Wintour is?" And I said, "No." And she looked at me, and then she asked, "Do you read Vogue?" And I said, "No, but I read Allure. I love looking at the pictures when I'm on the Stairmaster."
Were you applying just For HR or a
no, I
specific-
didn't know what the job was. I
You
thought
said
it was an
allure.
informative meeting. And then she basically said, well, Anna Winter, the editor-in-chief of Vogue Magazine, is looking to hire an assistant. I don't know if it's going to be the first assistant or the second, but here's a magazine.
Which now there are at
It
least
was
3 or 4.
It was the June 1998 issue, Sandra Bullock in a pink dress
I
by
remember that.
Stephen Meisel. She goes, read it cover to cover, and I'll call you, I guess on the landline.
Yeah,
in
of
the
course.
apartment
Yeah.
I was subletting
Yeah,
in Alphabet
212,
City.
whatever. Yeah.
She said, I'll call you when Anna can meet with you. And on the way out, I heard her say, and get some skinny heels. And I was like, what? Nine West? These are the best of Nine West.
I thought you were just going to get skinnier, but that's funny.
But what happened when you had that interview with the fabulous
Well, she
Bucky?
basically, because again, they did literally go through assistants like tissue paper because it was intense. They tried to weed out the kids that wouldn't make it for more than a month. Don't forget, it took Vogue 3 months to get your name on the masthead because God forbid the copy
Right,
editor
that's true.
puts your name on the masthead, moves a comma over, and then you quit or get fired.
Yeah.
She yelled at me for the first 20 minutes. Not abusive yelling, but she was pretty intense. Like, why are you wasting my time? What are you doing here? I mean, really, I got better things to do, kid. And she was just trying to scare me because she knew what I was,
Right.
if successful in this process, going to face. And because I had worked in design and Mr. Blass was always the consummate professional, I had a few other gigs. Like Randolph Duke at Halston was one of the nastiest people. And so I had some experience with some tough personalities already as an assistant. So somehow I got the balls to lean in towards her at her desk. And I said, Miss Keaty, I appreciate all of the scare tactics and I get it. But when you're ready to start the real interview, so am I. And she looked at me. I almost peed on myself. I was like, who the fuck do you think you are talking to me like this? But then something clicked and she's like, you know what? You might work. And she got it. So then the interview went better. And honestly, I wasn't interviewing for anything.
Right.
I was just interviewing.
Yeah, like I was. You
to
going
be
in-
a piece of paper in her folder.
Right.
That she could pull out and say, maybe this one later. So that ended, I thought, well. And I didn't hear anything for 6 months.
Oh, wow.
And 6 months later, I got a phone call. Would you like to come in and interview for the fashion closet job at Vogue? I knew what Vogue was, but I didn't know exactly what the fashion closet was because there was no movie back then. And I said, yes, absolutely. And, went in and met with the market director and the accessories director.
Did you have to meet Anna or no?
I did, yes.
What was that
She
like?
meets everyone. I came in like a sweater, t-shirt, and jeans, sneakers, and I meet with these two great editors. And of course, this is at 350 Madison, and you could smoke back then, by the way, now I'm remembering, because the woman that interviewed me was blowing Marlboro smoke in my face while she curled up in an office chair. And then the accessories director came in, and then she stands up, they start talking offside, and then they turn around and look at me, and Lauren says, okay, so you're ready. And I said, ready for what? She said, to meet Anna. And I had a meltdown. Like, oh, no. I have to go home. There needs to be hair and makeup. I need to put a tuxedo on. They're like, no. This is better. Just trust us. Just don't think about it. She just wants to meet you. It was one of the scariest things. It was to this day, it's a blur.
Right.
I remember Anna's assistant holding my hand and saying, it's going to be okay, walking me down this hallway And in my head, it's all like a Kubrick film. It's not quite The Shining, but sort of. And she's like, it's going to be fine. It won't be long. And I walk in. She takes her glasses off, very firm handshake, sits down, tells me that I can do so, and looks at my resume. And luckily, she and Bill Blass were close when he was still alive. And he has written me the most amazing recommendation letter ever. I have it framed. And she's like, oh, I adore Bill. And I did get the up and down look. And she said, a lot of people want to know what's happening at Vogue. Can you keep your mouth shut? And I said, yes, ma'am. And she said, oh, thank you. And that was it. And they're like, okay, we'll see you on Monday. I'm like, wait, what is this job exactly?
Yeah.
Like, no one's actually told me what I'm doing. And yeah,
that was that. And your first day, a lot of people don't know yet that you were going to be assisting Andre. And I know Andre is beloved by everyone, and that anyone listening to this will know who Andre Leon Talley is. So
if they don't look it up, they should.
Exactly. So when did he come into the picture, and when did you find out you were going to be assisting him? Because that was not brought to your attention.
Correct. Back then, if you were the closet assistant, you also kind of inherited Andre. And he wasn't in the office every single day, but you still worked for him every single day.
And what was that meeting like? Because I'm sure he had to meet you. Or did he just get you? And if he didn't like you?
He met me, but I didn't have to interview with him.
Okay.
You know, his assistant also ran the closet.
Right.
And I think also because he wasn't in the office every single day, that's just how the structure was set up.
Yeah.
It wasn't because he didn't deserve his own full-time assistant that only catered to him. It was because he was, I think, at large at that time versus when he was creative director there all the time. But we really bonded immediately, because I was completely obsessed with him and so thrilled is an understatement to be working for him. We are both from North Carolina, and he grew up in Durham. Half of my family on my dad's side is also from Durham. So we had this funny, like, North Carolina connection, and I think he liked that. And he could tell I was raised well by good parents, as he was, his grandmother. And there was a mutual respect. And it was a breath of fresh air because he never, ever treated me unkindly. Andre was a lot, but never really treated me the way other people in previous jobs had treated me.
Right. Do you remember the first assignment you had from him?
Yes, I do. Absolutely. He was going on a tour of ballroom dance academies across the United States. So I had to plan his entire trip.
Was it for a feature he was writing for Vogue?
Yes, so he was writing a feature for Vogue on ballroom dance. And I had to plan everything, produce it, flights, hotels, set up interviews with these academies, everything, head to toe.
Yeah.
What you, tiny miniature version of your career.
Right.
Planning every single thing and crossing every T and dotting every I. I will never forget. I thought, this is so
You didn't get to go with him, though, right?
No, I didn't go.
Because you had to be...
I felt like I was there because he did call me every 5 minutes.
And didn't he call you Mr. Coates?
Yes, he called me Mr. Coates pretty often. When I was in trouble, he would call me Mr. Brian Coates. It's like your mother using your full name.
Exactly.
That was his version. If I heard Mr. Brian Coates, then I got a little shaky. It probably happened 3 or 4 times.
What were some of the
4 years.
craziest things you had to do for him?
It's funny. I never considered it crazy. Looking back on it now and knowing what assistants think.
Yeah, like all of us. It was normal.
It was normal.
And it was our first job.
And it was crazy. I have 3 framed faxes from him on my bedroom wall that say something, paraphrasing, please call Niall Smith and have this dog pillow returned. Please call the Carlisle Hotel and retrieve my Vuitton trunks. There are 17 of them.
So
Send
not
them-
over email. This is faxes.
This is a fax.
But did he
That's how
fax
we
from
requested
home?
looks from everywhere.
Okay, but even at
or-
home, instead of calling.
Yes, he liked a hard copy.
Yeah, okay.
So he liked it to be on paper. And they were just gigantic type, even though he
Yep.
had perfect vision. That's why there were so many pages. And it's call the Carlisle, pick up my 17 Vuitton trunks, not me literally, but send the messenger.
Right.
Call Ingrid Sishi at interview, say yes to dinner, call Graydon and tell him where Ingrid likes to sit at dinner, etc. And it was the longest list of just stuff we had to do. And back then, personal versus work.
Exactly. It was the same. Everything crosses over. And, it makes sense. And
we didn't think that was weird.
No, and it's harder now in a way because that's how I was taught, and everything helps make the person more successful or their life easier at work. You're assisting them. It doesn't matter what it is. Assist them so they can focus
you're
on
making their life
making
easier,
this magazine.
and you're also learning a lot about their personality and their quirks because you're doing these personal things.
So with Andre, when were you expected to get this list complete?
As soon as possible.
Okay.
It makes waste, Mr. Coates.
How would you manage both responsibilities? Because essentially you're working for all the editors and Andre. And listen, I worked there too. I know the egos and the competition. You cannot say to Grace, I'm sorry, I was going to do that. Andre just called to ask me something.
Correct.
Right.
Well, luckily, I guess Grace and everyone else that you are talking about had their own full-time assistants.
Right.
That helped in a way, and they were all really great with me, pretty much 99% of them. Again, being a guy helped.
Right.
I hate to generalize, but the catty girl thing, I had less of that.
Right.
So that helped. And you just learn to manage it. You just learn to juggle. A lot of our lives were just juggling and figuring it out. And you're correct. You don't say no to Miss Coddington ever.
Right.
That was actually the very first thing they taught me when I started, was that no is not an answer for anything.
But how about if it was a question that Grace wanted a look that was on Tani's rack?
No is not an answer for anything. Well, I learned to navigate
And the
that.
hierarchy.
At 350 Madison, they made me repeat it out loud. You can't say no to us. They also started letting me do the men's market. They literally said, you can't tell us no. Therefore, no one is allowed to tell you no. Do you understand? Yes. And then they made me repeat it. Say it out loud.
Oh, no one else that you're calling.
Right. Like PR people.
Right.
If Grace wants 44 Prada looks, which she did, it got nuanced later. But the message was, don't let people push you around.
Right.
And if you nuance that and learn to be a diplomat, it's actually a really great life lesson.
Right.
It was taught to me in a little bit more hardcore way, but it is something I've used more diplomatically in my life, like let's negotiate.
Right. And what were some of your fondest memories of the experience working for Andre? What were some of the craziest stories? Did he ever get mad at you?
I think I only remember one time when he had given me this Yoji scarf for Christmas, and I loved it. And I was like wearing it indoors. We're in a conference room watching something, and the managing editor walked in and asked him a question, and I'm just sitting in the room beside him. And we had gotten so close, our relationship, that I forgot about boundaries in the office. And I remember she said, oh, I like your scarf. Where'd you get it? And I said, oh, Miss Thing gave it to me. And I could just feel like I had crossed a line after I said that. And she kind of backed out of the room, and he said, Mr. Brian Coates, close the door. And I knew I was in trouble. And you can't take it back.
Yeah.
The funniest thing was Andre getting mad at me was not what I was used to from previous monsters. He said, please don't ever call me Miss Thing in front of the help. And I'm like, Andre, this is the managing editor of Vogue Magazine. He's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Just don't call me that in front of people.
I can hear him too.
And that's him getting mad.
Yeah.
But no, I have so many
what was
amazing
the
stories,
story?
but that was like
But the one where you messed up the reservations.
Oh, so
I
he
love
was
that.
obsessed because he lived in Hastings-on-Hudson and would take the train in to the city every day. And Michael Jordan, the basketball player, had just opened a steakhouse at Grand Central. And all I heard...
Oh, it was called Michael's?
2 weeks. It was called Michael Jordan's Steakhouse.
Okay.
Michael's is an industry restaurant.
Of course.
Where everyone in the business
That
goes.
or the
44
Four
used
Seasons.
to be, and the Four Seasons.
And the Four Seasons was tricky with the Four Seasons restaurant and the Four
Correct.
Seasons hotel.
I made that mistake before too, and sent him to the wrong place.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we've all made that mistake. But he talked about, he was obsessed with Michael Jordan's Steakhouse. 2 weeks I've heard, like, I want a tour of Michael Jordan's Steakhouse.
Yeah.
Of course, he wants Michael Jordan to give him the tour,
Right.
which is not unusual, and was actually doable. I was working on that.
So he was saying, call Michael Jordan.
Yes, I would
to
like a
give
tour of his steakhouse.
That was never going to happen.
No, it was. I was working on
Michael Jordan was going to give
He
Andre
was
Leon
coming to New York, his
Wow.
team, and we were working on it. But
Okay.
obviously, he is a famous basketball player. So it takes a little while to sort out the details.
Right.
And then there was just a day in that 2 week period of his obsession with this Michael Jordan Steakhouse where he quickly came in and said, set up lunch with Oscar, meaning Oscar de la Renta, his close friend at Michael's, the industry restaurant where everyone goes to in the media, fashion, publishing industry. And because I had become so closely linked with this steakhouse in a train station, I messed up. And Andre was pretty independent.
Yeah.
I didn't have to make every reservation, and he would just walk in and sometimes or do it himself. He was funnily independent that way. But
So you wouldn't be calling to make the
not every single time.
Right.
Sometimes,
Right.
but not as much as other
Right.
assistants had to do. He had an independent streak like
But
that.
you did call Michael Jordan's
But yes.
Steakhouse to make a reservation.
Correct.
Okay.
This is the only time I got in so much trouble. I knew I was going to be fired. I called Oscar's office and told them that Andre would like to meet for lunch at Michael Jordan's Steakhouse. And long pause. Yes, I'm serious. Yes, he's obsessed with it, and that's all he's talked about for weeks. Yes, I'm sure. Again. And here's the time. Cool. Okay. Set up. And Andre had done it his side himself.
Right.
Like he just shows up. What I misconstrued was that Andre meant Michael's, the industry restaurant. What I had told Oscar de la Renta's team, unfortunately, was Michael Jordan's Steakhouse.
And when did you realize there had been a mistake?
When they brought Andre a landline phone to his table and called me and said, "Where is Oscar?" I don't know. There were no cell phones back then, by the way.
Right.
He should be there. Let me call the office and see, where he is. Do you know how long I've been sitting here? Barbara Walters just gave me the side eye. I mean, where is he?
Did you realize then that Barbara
Not
Walters
yet.
wouldn't be at the steakhouse?
Yes. That's when I'm like, yeah, okay, wait, hang on. You are at Michael's. And I sent a legendary designer alone to Grand Central to a steakhouse. My other landline button lights up. It's Oscar's office. Hi, where's Andre? Oscar's been sitting in a fucking train station for 30 minutes alone. And then it sunk in and I thought, this is like global thermonuclear war. I have ruined the planet kind of thing. Two legends are sitting at two different restaurants, just tapping their toes, getting stared at alone. And they didn't actually end up meeting. They both just were so pissed off. They went back to their offices. Andre came in And he looked at me and he said, "Mr. Coates, never again." And then closed his door. And I thought, okay, I will see it someday. And I have to say, just he never fired me. And he absolutely 1,000,000% could have. And back then, most people would have.
And how many years were you at Vogue altogether before the GQ job?
About, I want to say 3.5, or close to 4, I think. You know, they're like dog years, dinosaur years. Like,
and had you been ready to move on, or did you hear about the GQ
no,
job?
I was so happy working for Andre. There was an opening at GQ, and HR had called, because back then you couldn't jump from one magazine to the other without permission from your current boss. They called me just to suss it out. And I said, no, thank you. And they were like, what?
Yeah.
It's an editor position.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I'm fine. I'm happy here. I don't want to go into men's, and I love my girls. I love Andre. And then they called him, and that's when the shit hit the fan. And it's funny, it was more about his legacy in a way than my career. He got upset because that's another Mr. Brian Coates get in here moment. I'm like, what did I do? And he's like, I heard that HR called and offered you an editor position at GQ. And I said, yeah, I turned it down. I don't want it. I'm happy here. Mr. Coates, I make major editors out of all my assistants, and you will not be the sole person who does not go on to be. So I'm really doing a bad accent, but it was more the emotion. I was not going to be the blip who,
that's amazing.
didn't go on. And you're correct, because as you know, we weren't encouraged or uplifted to become editors. You had to leave a magazine.
Yeah, typically,
very few people got promoted within.
Yeah, unless they saw something. So even though it was going to be inconvenient for him, he was thinking...
He wanted, he wanted to push me and see me succeed, which I'm going to cry, but that was unheard of.
Was he like a father figure? Or
in a way, yeah.
Definitely your biggest mentor.
A gigantic mentor, for sure.
Right.
100%. But it kind of blew my mind, because I knew how it worked, like, in general. Like, you don't become an editor. You have to go to not even a different magazine within Condé Nast. You really had to leave and go to Hearst, or, and then maybe come back as an editor. So for him to not only push me, but no, he's going to have to train another person.
Right.
It takes a year there just to get your feet on the ground to know how it works before you actually start your real job.
But at least you had him in the building, which was great.
Yeah.
Let's jump to when you started at GQ. What were you doing? You were an editor. And what were the glaring differences, other than it was a men's magazine versus a women's magazine? As the editors had certain ways they like to look at the clothes, mannequins versus on the rack. Anna had a very specific way of how she ran her magazine and what the expectations were of the employees and the culture on that floor.
Meetings were longer. That drove me crazy. I'm still pretty close to everyone that I worked with there, and they really are like family to me. Who was the
editor-in-chief at the time?
Art Cooper.
Who's amazing.
I mean, Art was more Mad Men, Martini,
Absolutely.
Lunch,
Old
Four
school.
Seasons, even in the office, So in a lot of ways, it was great, because I got to see that. And then when Jim Nelson became editor-in-chief, the magazine went a 180 again. It became more youth-focused.
Well, I think you should talk about that, because Art Cooper passed away. He was one of the legends. It really was Graydon, Anna, and Art Cooper.
Yeah.
And when he passed away, whenever an editor-in-chief leaves, there's a changing of the guard, and that makes everyone nervous.
Well, they wipe out their entire staff.
Right. But in this case, they promoted someone within. But that also creates competition, because who's going to get it?
I remember the line outside of the door.
Right. It's not like there's a line for the crown. There's not someone that's necessarily the next in line. Yes. It's which editor are you going to choose?
Right. And who's best for the demographic and what's the demographic and the...
Yeah. And at that time, it's not like it is now with Carla Martinez or Edward or Mel Ottenberg. Like this fashion side, it was abnormal for a fashion editor to run a magazine. It was going to be someone with literary experience.
Oh, and that's what Jim Nelson was. He was a writer at GQ, but previously he was at Harper's Magazine, not the fashion magazine. He wasn't a fashion person.
But do you think he was the best for the job of the group?
I'm not sure. I'm not even being diplomatic, but I don't know. I will say he had a great spirit and questioned everything, like meaning curious about everything. Like, why do we wear this with this? And Jim Moore, who was my boss and creative director, my other great mentor, was always there to guide him through that world. And so, yeah, it was completely different.
And they were both trained under art.
Yeah. And my thing, essentially, it was like I had a lot of background already, but to be really honest, it was like the meetings could have been shorter because we were both used to like 2-minute meetings. And the famous Vogue getting Andre on the Concorde story, when you told me I had 1:40 and I asked for 10 minutes or something to get that approved. It was just different, and it took me a while to assimilate into men's because I never thought I'd be there. It just took a while to flip the switch.
What made you want to leave GQ to go freelance? I know I stayed at Vogue 20 years, which was probably 15 years too long. I mean, I still have Vogue on my resume after 5 years. I didn't need 20, but you get comfortable. And I don't know.
GQ was like that too, by the way. It was that was one of the other anomalies. They were lifers. You didn't really leave. It was one of the only magazines in the company where everyone had been there for a really long time.
Yeah. And, I know. I mean, why leave? We were at the height of the magazine.
And it was, and it was pretty great,
Yeah.
Then,
so
in
what
the culture? It was.
Did you feel like it was time to do something different?
I mean,
was there another changing of the guard?
Yeah. Our circle in this industry is very small, like most industries. And I was getting to the point where I wanted to do something else, or thinking of what is the next step after having been there and learned so much. And really, honestly, I would meet friends who were half as talented, I thought, or at least the same as me, who had kids in private school or house upstate or whatever, and were making actual money.
Yeah.
Because you don't make money.
No, I know. And I think
as an editor at a magazine.
Yeah. When I first tried to leave, it was more about we knew the direction the industry was going. And at the same time, I was seeing what the world was outside of Vogue. What I was doing was essentially casting the magazine. I was seeing people getting paid so much for casting ad campaigns.
And then they started taking our perks away.
Right.
Like,
so
that was the McKinsey bullshit was one of that, plus the economy collapsed.
Yeah.
And like twice, I think, while we were there. Yeah. And I always use this analogy to people. Yes, we were spoiled in the beginning because that was the marketing plan of this company, their ethos. Our editors are coddled. They have cars waiting outside. But that was the culture.
Right.
And I always say, imagine if you raise children to be complete spoiled brats and entitled to everything. And then when they get to 16 and want a Porsche, and you're like, you don't get a Porsche. Why do you think you deserve a Porsche?
Right.
Like, what do you mean? Like, what? But they took all that away.
Right.
Every single perk was gone. So it's like, what am I doing this for?
When you left GQ, I don't know if this happened to you, but it happened to me. It was kind of a reckoning because we had both been at Condé Nast for so long, and this is before COVID. People are not working from home, and we're on our own, meaning when we're making a phone call, it's not Brian Coates from Vogue or GQ, it's Brian Coates, same with me. And it's scary. In theory, leaving to do your own thing, it's like, it's about time. Other people have done it. Look at Leslie Fremar.
Yep.
She went to Prada, and then she's styling everyone from Charlize to Kamala Harris. I mean, you're seeing all these people become so successful, making so much money with the background or with the experience of Vogue with much less time than I did, but it's also the security blanket's gone. And you are out there testing your ability and your worthiness. In my mind, that was what it was like for me. Will people still take my call when I'm not at Vogue? And thankfully, I was told from the way beginning, Kevin Huvain was one of my bosses at Creative Artists Agency, and his brother Stephen Huvain is a huge publicist. He always told me, just make sure that people will take your call when it's just Jill Demling.
See, I was told, don't think if you ever don't sit at this desk that anyone's going to answer your phone.
Yeah.
Luckily, they did ask me to stay on as a contributing editor.
Yeah, you had
to
that
me,
helps.
but that did help. Like
So
at
you
least
could kind
in
of
emails.
slowly.
I didn't cut the cord. Listen, in my defense, I fucking earned that. It was blood, sweat, and tears for a long time, and not the biggest salary in the world.
What was the first year like on your own?
I overdid everything because of our training. I was so used to the way we were working. My very first shoot, it was like Entertainment Weekly. It was just a portrait of Jack Houston that they were going to plop into a group picture of the Houston family. And I showed up with 18 racks of clothes. And when I walked in and saw, I was like, oh my God, there are no clothes here. Oh my God, who's gonna scream at me? And the photographer comes up to me and he's like, what? What? I'm like, I know, I'm sorry. I did the best I could. I only had 2 days notice. He's like, there are 18 racks of clothes here. You know this is a portrait, right? And they're like, I didn't understand what he meant because we've been plugged into this matrix for so long. And Grace could look at 2 studios at Pier 59 where the whole floor is filled with shoes. And she could find the one that we did not have.
Exactly.
And that was what we all grew up doing. So I had to kind of unplug myself and realize you can dial it down by half and they're still really impressed.
Right.
And that took me a while to learn. My first catalog job, I worked with Bloomingdale's and they gave me like 11 prep days for a shoot. And the very first time I called my manager and she said, how'd it go? And I said, great, I'm done, like with the prep. I don't understand, what are the 11 other days for? And she said, I think you need to slow down and maybe have lunch. I know you work quickly, but take your time a little bit. Like I was just still in that mindset.
Right.
You know, what we went through, it had its ups and downs, but it's the best training in the world.
No,
and
I know.
I
And then
I wouldn't trade it for anything.
One of your biggest personal clients is Jimmy Fallon, who is a Vogue favorite. And that must just be so fun too, to have another relationship where it's not just an in and out.
Yeah.
It's not transactional.
It was cool just to do something like that was different than showing up on a shoot, working with talent for that day, and then they leave, and then you never see them again. This was the relationship that kind of evolved over time.
Yeah.
So we learned it together. I didn't particularly teach him a lot. He taught me a lot. It was kind of figuring out what works and what doesn't, and I love that collaboration.
And did you just fall into that with him? Because there are people that are personal stylists.
Yeah. How it started was his previous stylist was overcommitted or something, and he was looking for someone. I remember the interview at 30 Rock. He was the coolest guy. He's one of the very few celebrities I've worked with or ever met who is the exact same person when the camera turns off.
Yeah.
He's just a great guy, and he loves clothes. And it's a pleasure to work with someone like that that's not a nightmare.
Exactly.
He's awesome.
I could talk to you forever, but we're going to have to wrap it up soon. And I think it's super important for my guests to pass along to our listeners some of the invaluable advice they have been given or have learned on their journey to where they are now. What do you think your superpower is? I mean, you're charming as hell, but what makes you so good at your job? I know you said earlier your determination.
Yeah, the way I was raised, my parents told me, be the first one there, the last one to leave, and work harder than everybody else. And just be present and listen. The second one, you know this very well, diplomacy. You have to manage egos. You have to manage incompetence and make everyone happy. There are very few people, except for fashion editors or stylists, who know how hard fashion editors and stylists work. We're schlepping clothes on the train at 5 o'clock and have to put all this stuff together all night and then show up sparkly in the morning for the client. Just keep working harder and harder and try not to let the ephemera and the bullshit get in the way. Just really try to stand out in the most positive way, and you'll be fine.
Are there any specific lessons you've learned from people like Andre or Jim Moore, Anna, even Jimmy Fallon?
It's more about listening to people. It's something I have tried to become better at over the course of my life, but listening is the best thing in the world. Making people feel heard and being able to jump and solve a problem really quickly and not letting it get to...
Do you have any quotes from Andre that you have in your mind of things he would say when you couldn't figure out a look or you were having a bad day?
I hear it all the time, not related to what I'm doing, but it's about solving a problem. Like, where is my ticket for the Concorde? He called me on his way to De Gaulle, and I already gotten him a first-class ticket on Air France, which was not the easiest thing to do. And he decided at the last minute he wanted to be on the Concorde. Why don't I have my ticket yet? Well, Andre, it's going to be there. I had not gotten it approved yet.
Right.
It was that you better fix this by the time I get to the airport, even though I just told you 10 minutes ago and there are 30 people that this has to go through. I always kept those things in mind. The perspective. You've always had something harder than what you're doing right now. So don't get overwhelmed by right now. Just remember on the scale, you've had worse and you can always solve it.
Those are great words of wisdom to wrap up with, but we still have to do the final 7. At the end of each episode, I like to ask my guests 7 rapid fire questions. They're the same for everyone. Okay, are you ready? AM or PM?
Chill. Peace.
Uber or Subway?
Subway, if it was safer.
Book or film?
Film?
Sweet or spicy?
Spicy.
Spots or stripes?
Stripes.
Top or bottom?
What? Pass.
I love you. Thanks, Brian.
What a chill way to end this. My God, I love you so much. Oh my goodness. Yeah, listeners, you'll have to tune in to find out, I guess.
Okay, that's our show. Thanks for listening to Going Rogue. And be sure to like and subscribe. Today's show is produced by me and Maddie Rosenberg at Radio Free Rhinecliff with assistance from Maddie Kelly. Special thanks to David Vo for our great graphics and Taras Romanov for our epic theme music. See you next Friday.